In this video lecture, we'll be going through some basic logistics and housekeeping for this course. Our goal here is to start out with a mutual understanding of how this online course will operate. Okay, let's get started. My name is Rob Lapkus, and I want to welcome you to this online section of CS12 here at Sierra College. The material we'll cover in this online version of the class will be identical to the material I cover in my on-ground version of this course. The main difference, of course, is that online, you'll be viewing and listening to online lectures in place of sitting in a lecture classroom on the Sierra campus. Pretty nice and convenient, right? Here's a list of the topics we want to go over as we embark upon this course. We want to start with a common understanding of the scope and the goals for this course. Next, we'll talk in broad overview terms about the general subject matter for this course. We'll talk about the roster, ads, and how to ensure that you continue in this online course. I want to give you a little bit on my background so that you'll understand the perspectives I'll be bringing to this course. I'll give you a short to-do list, which you should tackle ASAP while getting underway in this course. Hopefully you've already seen my pre-semester welcome email and gotten started on some of these things. We'll touch upon the syllabus in a summary fashion, since it represents the user's manual for this course. Everything you need to know about how this course operates and what to expect should be found in the syllabus, so it's important that you look it over and become familiar with its contents. Canvas is the workhorse tool we'll use on a daily basis in this class for all course activities, so we'll spend a little bit of time acquainting you with what's where in Canvas. Finally, I want to share some lessons learned from last semester's students about how to succeed and thrive in this course. I hope you'll pay close heed to these, because the same things keep arising over and over again in all the semesters I've been teaching this course. Finally, I'd also like to share some of my own perspectives on how to succeed in this course. As noted here, the syllabus, Canvas, and the advice will be covered in separate lecture segments from this one. All right, let's move on. CS12 is intended to be the introductory first real programming class in this department. Hopefully all of you have already completed CS10 or its equivalent prior to this class. In CS10, you were exposed to a broad overview of computer science topics. Now you'll be diving deeper. Here we'll be doing actual programming in a real live language, in our case Java, using object-oriented or OO principles. We'll talk a little bit about Java and OO today, but we'll cover it in much greater depth over the coming weeks. This is a 16-week, 3-unit course. There is a required text, and that will be the course pack of my own printed lecture notes at a reasonable cost that is much less than publisher textbook prices. I cover all the needed topics in a logical, sequential way, making use of my own lecture materials, accompanying lecture videos, and code examples. More details on all these a bit later on. Past programming experience, while helpful, is definitely not required. We'll be presenting Java from a fundamentals-up perspective, and we'll emphasize language elements which are universal to pretty much all programming languages. So even if you've had some previous programming experience, hopefully you'll still gain some new perspectives on programming in general. Here are the main goals of this course. The first two are our primary goals, but the other two are important secondary goals. First, we want to introduce you to standard mainline programming concepts, using the Java programming language to do that. Second, we want to learn some of the fundamental ideas of object-oriented programming. We'll start by learning to use some reusable software building blocks called objects. Then later in the course, we'll learn how to write these software components for ourselves. As we go along, we want to learn how to write software which not only works, but is also clean and well-structured and well-documented, so that we can reuse it for other projects. This just represents good software practices, and we'll emphasize that in all the code that we'll write. Finally, as we mentioned earlier, we want to talk about Java and programming in general in terms of language elements which are common to all programming languages. The big idea here is that if we learn the basic ideas of programming well in one language, all of the next languages that you might program in will hopefully look very familiar, because the ideas are common across most all languages. The details may differ a little bit, but the general concepts are going to look the same. Does anyone recognize that sound? What do you think I've got in front of me? If you guessed a bucket of Lego blocks, you're absolutely right. How many of you played with Legos when you were a kid? Probably many of you, I'm guessing. Heck, I've got 2 kids, so I still play with them. They're probably the best creative building toy ever made. Classic stuff. So think back to when you were a kid and you had some cool idea for a new car, a castle, a dragon, or something else you just dreamed up. How did you go about making it? Did you take some small Lego molds, melt some plastic out in the garage, put in some colored dye, wait for them to cool, and build your own individual Legos? Or did you just reach into a bucket, find the shape and color Lego you were looking for, snap it together, and move on? I'm willing to bet that all of us did it that second way, right? In a sense, this class is all about learning how to create software Lego building blocks, just like the ones many of us had as kids. In object-oriented programming, we have these 2 dual core ideas of classes and objects. Classes are like templates or blueprints for some real-world things. They're descriptions for reusable software components. Classes bundle together the data which describes some real-world thing and all of the operations that real-world thing can do. Classes are like the molds which we might use to create individual Lego blocks. Objects, by contrast, are the individual items that we might stamp out using our class blueprint. They are all fundamentally the same, but they probably have their own individual differences. For example, let's say we have a class called Lego Block, as shown in the picture on the right. Its data might be things like its color, its shape, and its size. Its operations would be the things we can do with an individual Lego block. For example, assemble one or take it apart. So using that Lego block description, we might stamp out objects Lego 1, Lego 2, and Lego 3. Each object has its own name and color, but each is an instance of the original Lego class. For example, we might have a red 2x4 brick as Lego 1, a yellow 6x8 plate as Lego 2, and a blue 1x8 brick as Lego 3. Taking this idea back to software development, rather than creating all of our new software from scratch, we would really prefer to work with pre-built components that someone else has already created. Things like, for example, a file, a network connection, a calendar date, or descriptions of real-world things we create for ourselves, such as a browser, an engine, or a person. I'm just making up things off the top of my head, but you get the idea. The Java language provides a rich collection of several thousand real-world, reusable software components, so we don't have to start from scratch when writing some new program. And this is one of the key ideas in object-oriented programming. We'll come back to this idea in much more detail later, but that's just an introductory overview for now. So when someone asks you about the first day of Java class, you can tell them you talked about Legos. Okay, let's get back to some of the logistics of this class. If you're viewing this lecture or listening to it, I'm assuming you've already enrolled in the course. But if you want to continue with this course, I'm going to expect that you turn in both the course intro and the Hello World assignments by their due dates. Both of these assignments can be found on Canvas in the Week 1 module. If you don't turn in both of these assignments by their due dates, I will take that as an indication that you don't wish to continue with the course, and I may instructor drop you prior to the drop date, which is at the end of the second week. Fair enough? Now, in terms of ads, I will allow this course to grow a little bit beyond the published size, but I also want to keep it at a reasonable size. Once I have a realistic sense of how many people are actually going to be taking this course, I may send out a small number of ad codes to those on the waiting list in waitlist order. However, I will only do this if the other online sections are also full. If there are open seats in other online sections, there will be no ad codes given out. If you do receive one of these ad codes, it will then be your responsibility to formally add this course. I will not add you to this course. That will be up to you. Finally, please note that CS10 is now a formal prerequisite for this course. So it's my understanding that the enrollment system won't even allow you to add CS12 unless you have first completed CS10. Next, I want to give you a little bit of my background and bio. I've been teaching this course for multiple semesters here at Sierra College. I'm part of the adjunct faculty, which simply means I'm a part-time instructor here. I've spent much of the past several decades working in software development in some shape or form, as noted here. Much of my time has been spent in the aerospace and commercial design automation sectors. I've also studied at the university, community college, and professional education sectors. Interestingly, my original academic background is not in computer science, but rather in engineering. My first two academic degrees were in mechanical engineering from UC Davis. So I tend to be focused on the practical problem-solving side of software development. But I've also studied at Sierra College in this computer science department. I've taken most of the classes in the CS department and earned 2 degrees and the web programming certificate. So I know this department, the courses, and most of the instructors here. All in all, I've programmed in more than a dozen different programming languages. The first one was very tough for me, but after that they just got easier and easier. After a while, programming languages start to look very much like each other, so that has influenced my teaching approach in this course. I don't know if this is good for business or not, but I nearly failed my first programming class many years ago. Hey, it happens. I remember how rough it was for me, and so I try to teach this course in the manner I wish it had been explained to me way back then. It gives me a lot of empathy for people learning programming for the very first time. So I hope all that gives you a good sense of me and where I'm coming from in teaching this course.
Finally, here's a short laundry list of things I want you to get started on. First, you need to obtain the Lecture Notes course pack ASAP. Details on how and where to obtain it were given in the welcome email you should already have received, and are also found in the syllabus. You'll need these materials right away, so you can follow along and take notes on the lecture videos. Next, I want you to spend a little time reviewing the syllabus and getting familiar with the layout of this course on Canvas. These two things will be the topics of the next 2 lecture segments, so we'll go into more detail on both of these. If you aren't already enrolled in the class but receive an ad code, please make sure to enroll yourself in the class on MySierra. Alternately, if you decide that you don't want to continue in this course, please make sure to formally drop yourself so that someone else on the waiting list can take your spot. Finally, just as a reminder, these are the 2 initial assignments I'm going to expect you to complete by their due dates if you wish to remain in this course. The first assignment will be a short course intro assignment consisting of 3 parts as listed here. Make sure that you complete all 3 parts of the assignment, but you can complete them separately. The second assignment will be a step-by-step, getting started traditional Hello World program in Java. I'll demonstrate all the steps to you in the lecture video. Then I'd like you to implement the same program using the same step-by-step process. All of these steps will be clearly spelled out in the assignment handout. Okay, that's it for now. In the lecture segments which follow, let's take a closer look at both the syllabus and at Canvas.